Hey, what's up everyone? I hope we're all doing well. Let's start talking about Jigsaw. So, as many of you watching this probably know, this film is based off the original Saw film written by James Wan and Lee Winnell. It is also the eighth installment in the franchise. While the rest of the films had a actual numeric title, other than I guess the last one, which was Saw 3D, but technically Saw 7, the final chapter, this one is its own kind of reinvented title, Jigsaw. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't relate to those other 7 films. It does. However, this one takes place 10 years later. While the other films kind of went really hand in hand and felt like one kind of like you're watching a really long series of films, this one has more of its own standalone feel, so I think even if you haven't seen the other films, you could still enjoy it. However, one thing that's nice about this film is it has a little bit of a different feel to it than the rest. Now, if you're a longtime Saw fan, that might turn you off. There are certain things about these films that I really like, and there are certain things that I could do completely without, or a lot less in general. And I'll tell you guys right now, I used to watch Saw back when it came out in theaters. Yes, I saw it back then. I was really young. Probably too young to see it. I watched about the first 4, and at some point I just kind of gave up. Back then, I really loved the first one. However, the second, not so much. The third and fourth were okay, but it just became too much for me. And you know, when you release so many films for so many years in a row, it just starts to drag on a bit. They start to lose ideas, there's less originality, so on and so forth. Well, with this new film, I really wanted to go back and at least see if I could sit through those films again. This time I actually got through all 7, as I said, and for the most part, I think they're all okay. I do really like the first one still, and I think the second one is a lot better than I remembered. But I'll tell you guys right now, I think this new film, Jigsaw, might be my second favorite compared to everything else. And I'll also share a ranking by the end of this video. Now, I literally just rewatched those 7 films in the last 4 days, and I just saw the new one last night, so my mind is just filled with way too many gross and terrible things, I guess, because of these films. But I'm hanging in there. One of my favorite aspects about this film was it's way more fun and it's a lot less gory. That's one of my things I really wasn't a fan of for the most part, was how the later renditions of the first Saw film, they all started to become more and more along that torture genre, that sort of art that they were trying to get across. That really isn't for me, I'm sorry to say. For those of you that are fans of that, that's great. But I really dig the psychological aspect of these films way more than just, oh, how much can you gross me out and how badly can someone get tortured or whatever. So I'll say, if you weren't a fan of those things, and that was the reason why you never really gave this series a chance in the first place, well, I would say check out the first film if you haven't seen it. Give that one a chance, because there was a lot they couldn't show. It was very low budget. From then on, it sort of grew a reputation as these films that were mostly featuring a lot more torture. Now, this new one, thankfully, they sort of subvert a lot of that, and they give us a much more well-rounded horror film with that was really a nice, just sort of Halloween fun, you know, Jigsaw is back and we're gonna reinvent what we originally set out to do. So the main premise of this film essentially is that all these Jigsaw murders are starting to happen again, and people are wondering what is going on and how can this happen, because, well, most of us would know that Jigsaw is dead. So is this one of his followers, someone he trained, someone that, is this him? Who is it? You know, you're sort of trying to figure that out throughout the entire film, and that's also one of the biggest sort of secrets going into this film. We don't really know. Now, we get a very similar Saw premise where we're introduced to a certain set of characters that must undergo all these trials to sort of prove and play these games to essentially show why they should appreciate their life more and essentially atone for what they did in the past that got them here in the first place. So there you have it. We have a Saw film. Now, what I really enjoyed about this one was not only was there a lot more humor, but it also didn't feel like it was taking itself so seriously that it was just kind of, you know, engulfed in this sort of dread. And I was fine with that with the original films, but to be honest, it started to get a little old as it went on. As the later films weren't as good, it seemed like as the movie took itself so serious, it just didn't feel like it was warranted if it wasn't going to be paid off in a good way. Now, while this film does take itself seriously as a genuine horror film, it's nice because it's not tremendously scary, it's not tremendously gory, but it does have a really interesting and intriguing plot, and it's very entertaining and well paced. Now, the biggest reason why I say this is probably my second favorite of all 8 films is because I really dug the final twist in this film. Yes, there is a twist, just like all the other Saw films. If there wasn't a twist, there really wouldn't be a Saw film. You'll notice throughout parts of this movie there'll be times where you're like, wait, why didn't I see that? Or why is this happening? Or wait, how does this make any sense at all? As with pretty much all the Saw films. But this one really felt like it was paid off in terms of everything you weren't really seeing or completely understanding. It really felt like they knew what they wanted to tell you by the end point, and you got pretty much almost everything you wanted to know. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a Saw film either if it didn't at least give you the hint that if they really wanted to, they could potentially do a sequel in the future. However, I really hope they don't. Not to say that I wouldn't maybe be interested in seeing one, but I just feel like this is a really kind of nice, almost tribute to the Saw series. I think if they were to keep it going, just like the other original series, it could just potentially, most likely, get worse and worse. That's all I really want to say about this film right now, you guys, as of course, these films are really centered around the secrets, and if I say too much, then, well, I'm going to ruin it for you. One thing I definitely dug was that they got Charlie Clouser to come back and do the original score for this film. You know, you get that original that's not quite there, and it's not quite as you're used to hearing it, but you do hear little snippets of it here and there, you know, to sort of pay tribute, and it definitely has a lot of ringing and similar aspects to that throughout the film. One other thing I liked a lot about this film was the characters. They were much more interesting and less disposable compared to a lot of the other Saw characters that we've seen in the past. So as promised though, here is what I would rank the Saw films if I was to rank all 8 by the best to worst. I put a lot of weight in terms of the ones that are the least disturbing to me, but as well as the least boring. Overall, I think this was a very satisfying film in the franchise. And for those of you that may used to watch it like me, but at one point you're like, oh man, it's just a bunch of torture, blah, blah, or just eventually just gave up on it at some point, I'd say give this one a shot. It's more fun, less gory, and I think it might surprise you. Jigsaw slices its way back into Halloween tradition with a re-energized setup, cutting back on gore with effective thrills and twists. And that's why this film is a Dyligent pick. So what did you guys think of Jigsaw? Are you a fan of the series? Do you hate the Saw franchise? Have you ever tried giving it a chance? Let me know in the comments below. What are your favorite films out of the franchise? If I had to pick, I'd probably only really watch the first one, the second one, or the 8th one again, and I could pretty much do without the rest. My name is Dylan, and if you love entertainment, subscribe to my channel while this video ends, and send me a thumbs up before you go. Thanks for watching, and stay diligent.